The palace did not tremble when the letter was found. It went silent. Catherine opened the sealed envelope, expecting a private memory from Queen Elizabeth, but what she uncovered was something far more explosive. A final written instruction stripping Camilla of her royal title if certain boundaries were crossed. In one breath, the past reached forward and placed judgment on the present. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Catherine stepped into the private archive at Windsor, with the kind of care people use around things that still feel alive. Every folder carried the weight of the woman who had once ruled from behind calm eyes and careful words. Windsor was not just a royal home. It was one of the monarchy's oldest working residences, a place where private family history and public duty often sat locked in the same drawers. Catherine had been granted access to Queen Elizabeth's personal correspondence, meaning letters written by the late monarch herself, preserved because they carried emotional or constitutional importance. She expected memory. She expected grief. She did not expect a command. Her hand stopped when she saw the envelope marked for future review. Catherine did not open it quickly. Something about the marking felt too deliberate, too cold, too prepared. When the seal gave way, the first lines were gentle, almost tender, but the meaning beneath them was brutal. Queen Elizabeth had written that Camilla must lose her royal title if she interfered with the monarch's final wishes on family unity, royal protocol, and the protection of Diana's legacy. Royal protocol meant the set of rules and traditions that guide how the family behaves in public and private. This was not gossip. This was not a wounded comment hidden in sorrow. This was a warning written with the calm force of a crown that had seen danger before anyone else dared name it. Catherine felt shock strike first, sharp and breathless. Then sadness followed, heavier and slower, because the letter did not sound angry. It sounded certain. Queen Elizabeth had not written like a woman losing patience. She had written like a sovereign preparing for a future she feared others would mishandle. Camilla's title was not treated as decoration. It was treated as a responsibility that could be removed if it became a threat to trust, memory, or the fragile peace holding the House of Windsor together. That mattered because titles shape public respect, and public respect is the thin wall between monarchy and collapse. William watched Catherine change before him. The prince did not interrupt. He only moved closer, reading enough of her silence to understand that something inside the room had shifted beyond repair. When she reached the final line, her face tightened, not with triumph, but dread. The letter referred to a sealed review by senior courtiers, experienced palace officials, who advised the royal household and guard its records, making it clear this was not a private complaint. It was a hidden mechanism, waiting. Catherine read the address again, and the words cut deeper the second time. The letter was not meant for Charles I. It was meant for the one who must protect the crown when sentiment fails. In that moment, the late Queen placed Catherine at the center of a storm she had never asked to enter. William understood the danger at once. If Camilla knew this document existed, then every quiet move, every guarded reaction, every tense silence from the Queen consort suddenly meant something darker. Catherine folded the letter with trembling control. William looked at the envelope, then back at her, and asked the question neither of them wanted to hear aloud. Did Camilla already know? But before Catherine could decide what to do with the letter, she had to face the people whose lives were written between every line of it. This was never only about a title. It was about two women standing on opposite sides of royal memory. Catherine carried the burden of duty with quiet control, while Camilla stood inside a role that had taken decades to reach. Between them hovered Queen Elizabeth's final judgment, and behind that judgment was the shadow no palace wall could fully erase: Diana. Catherine did not rush to expose the letter. She sat with William in a private room and read the words again, slower this time, as if mercy might appear between the lines if she looked hard enough. The prince stayed close, not speaking over her thoughts, not pushing her toward action. He knew this was no ordinary family paper. A royal title means the formal name and public rank given to a member of the royal family, and removing one does not simply change wording. It changes respect, position, duty, and the way history remembers a person. Camilla received the notice in her own chamber, and her face tightened before the aide finished speaking. Catherine had entered the late Queen's sealed correspondence, and that alone was enough to disturb her. Sealed correspondence means private letters locked away for protection, often because they contain sensitive family or institutional matters. The Queen Consort did not look confused. She looked afraid. Not the fear of someone surprised by danger, but the fear of someone who recognizes a threat before it is named. She asked one quiet question, and the aide's silence answered more loudly than words. Charles felt the pressure before anyone placed the letter in his hands. The king knew this struck the weakest point of his reign, the space between the woman he loved and the mother whose authority still ruled the palace from beyond the grave. Queen Elizabeth's final authority mattered because she had built the modern monarchy through discipline, restraint, and duty. To ignore her last instruction would make Charles look weak. To obey it would wound Camilla in a way no apology could repair. William watched Catherine fold the letter, and Diana's name sat between them like a wound reopened. The future king felt protective of his wife, but he also felt the old ache of a son forced to see his mother's memory pulled into another royal battle. He understood why this mattered. If Camilla's role had crossed the boundary Queen Elizabeth feared, then the issue was not revenge. It was protection. Protection of Diana's place. Protection of Catherine's future. Protection of a monarchy that could not survive another quiet betrayal, dressed as tradition. A senior courtier confirmed the truth in a documented palace account prepared for Catherine's review. The letter had been logged, witnessed, and stored under restricted authority, meaning it was not emotion, not rumor, not private bitterness. Restricted authority means only a small group of approved palace figures could access or act on the document. Catherine heard the confirmation and lowered her eyes, because the decision suddenly felt less like choice and more like duty closing around her. Camilla stood alone after the aide left. She rested her hand on the back of a chair, steadying herself as the room seemed to shrink around her. The Queen Consort had fought for decades to reach this place, to stand beside Charles without apology, to be seen as part of the monarchy rather than a shadow from its past. Now Catherine held one document that could undo it all. And yet the letter did not appear from nowhere. It was born from one private moment the palace had tried desperately to bury. Every royal crisis has a beginning, but this one had a moment so precise that those who witnessed it never forgot the sound of the room afterward. It happened during a private family ceremony at Windsor, when a single sentence from Camilla crossed a line Queen Elizabeth had silently guarded for years. From that instant, the monarch began preparing her final protection. Camilla spoke softly, but the words landed hard. During a private Windsor remembrance ceremony, honoring Diana's charitable legacy, Catherine had moved to place Diana's sapphire brooch beside Queen Elizabeth's personal family Bible. The gesture had been approved in advance. It was meant as a quiet tribute to William's mother, not a challenge to the Queen Consort. A family Bible is a treasured religious book often used to mark births, marriages, deaths, and sacred family memory. In that room, it was not just an object. It was the heart of royal history, and Catherine understood that touching it carried meaning. Queen Elizabeth saw everything from the head of the room. She did not interrupt. She did not raise her voice. But when Camilla objected to the brooch being placed there, the monarch's face changed in a way the nearest courtiers never forgot. Diana's sapphire brooch mattered because it carried the memory of a woman still loved by millions. And charitable legacy meant the causes and public work Diana left behind after her death. Catherine removed her hand from the Bible and stepped back, but the hurt had already been done. William felt anger move through him like fire, but he forced himself to stay still because the Queen was present. The prince understood that if he challenged Camilla in that moment, the ceremony would become a public wound inside a private room. Later, in a recorded private conversation preserved in a family account, he told Catherine that his silence had cost him more than confrontation ever could. Catherine did not answer at first. She had been humiliated quietly, which sometimes cuts deeper than being attacked loudly. Queen Elizabeth waited until the room had emptied before she made her decision. That evening, she met privately with her closest legal advisor and dictated the first draft of the letter Catherine would one day discover. A legal advisor is a trusted expert who helps turn royal wishes into formal language that can be stored, witnessed, and later acted upon. The monarch did not speak like a grandmother wounded by family tension. She spoke like a sovereign protecting the future from a danger everyone else was too polite to name. The condition was direct. If Camilla attempted to diminish Diana's legacy, interfere with Catherine's protective role, or reshape royal memory for personal security, then a title review would begin. A title review means a formal look at whether a royal rank should continue to be used in public and ceremonial life. Queen Elizabeth tied that warning to the ceremony because she had seen the line crossed with her own eyes. Midnight carried the weight of judgment. The Queen set down her pen and told the advisor that love may soften a family, but it must never be allowed to rewrite the crown. And now, years later, those midnight words were about to collide with the woman they were written to restrain. The confrontation did not begin with shouting. It began with Catherine placing the letter on a polished table between them. Camilla looked at the seal, then at Catherine, and in that tiny movement, the entire room changed. There were no aides to soften the words, no courtiers to translate the silence, and no escape from what Queen Elizabeth had left behind. Catherine had requested the meeting herself. She wanted no advisors, no secretaries, no family intermediaries, and no carefully prepared palace phrases to hide behind. A private sitting room at Windsor became the only place where the truth could breathe without being managed. A sitting room is a smaller royal reception space, used for private conversations rather than public ceremonies. And that mattered because this meeting was not meant for performance. It was meant for impact. Catherine knew one wrong sentence could turn duty into cruelty, but silence would turn loyalty into betrayal. Camilla entered with her head high, holding the calm of a woman who had survived decades of judgment. The Queen Consort sat across from Catherine, as if this were another difficult conversation to control. Then the envelope moved forward. Catherine said the late Queen's instructions had been found, logged, and verified. Verified meant palace records had confirmed the document was real, witnessed, and properly stored. That word cracked the room open. Camilla's composure slipped, not fully, not dramatically, but enough for Catherine to see fear beneath the polish. Catherine did not speak with triumph. She spoke like someone forced to carry a blade she never wanted to use. Her voice stayed steady, but the pain behind it was clear. She told Camilla that Queen Elizabeth had written specific conditions, and that those conditions were tied to Diana's remembrance ceremony at Windsor. The Queen Consort's eyes sharpened at Diana's name. Catherine noticed it. She had expected denial, maybe even anger, but she had not expected the silence that came first. Camilla pushed back hard when the shock passed. She asked whether Catherine understood what removing a title would do to her reputation, to Charles, and to the reign he was still trying to steady. A royal title, once stripped or restricted, becomes more than a lost name. It becomes a public wound, a signal that trust has been broken at the highest level. Camilla knew that. Catherine knew it too. That was why the letter felt so dangerous. It did not threaten only one woman. It threatened the fragile image of the whole family. Catherine revealed the condition clearly. Queen Elizabeth had ordered a review if Camilla tried to diminish Diana's legacy, interfere with Catherine's protective role, or reshape royal memory for personal security. A title review is a formal palace process. where senior figures decide whether a royal rank should still be used in public and ceremonial life. Camilla denied she had meant harm, but the denial landed weakly. The letter did not describe one careless insult. It described pressure, discomfort, and quiet erasure over time. Catherine stood first. She was not acting as a rival, and Camilla knew it. She was acting as the messenger of a monarch who could no longer speak. The queen consort remained seated, the envelope still untouched before her, as if touching it would make the judgment real. But the true battle was not between two women. It was between love, law, and the power Queen Elizabeth had hidden inside her final command. Charles had spent a lifetime waiting for the crown, but nothing prepared him for the moment it turned back toward him, with his mother's handwriting. When the letter was placed before him, he did not reach for it immediately. He stared at the seal as though it were alive, because he knew one truth before reading a single word. This was Elizabeth, speaking as queen, not as mother. Charles sat in his private study with Catherine on one side of the desk, and William standing close enough to feel the weight of every breath. The letter rested between them like a judgment none of them could soften. The king did not rage, he did not accuse. Exhaustion crossed his face first, deep and quiet, because he understood that the document had not come to wound him by accident. A private study is a personal working room where a monarch handles sensitive papers away from public ceremony. And that mattered because this was not palace theater. This was family pain becoming royal duty. Catherine spoke carefully, choosing each word as if one wrong phrase could break the room. She told Charles she had not searched for power, had not sought the letter, and did not wish to turn Queen Elizabeth's final instruction into a weapon. But she also told him the truth. The document was formal enough that ignoring it would become its own betrayal. A formal instruction means a written command prepared with enough seriousness that palace officials must treat it as more than personal feeling. Catherine's voice stayed calm, but the hurt beneath it was impossible to miss. Charles looked down when Camilla's name entered the conversation. The king was trapped between love and obedience, between the woman he had fought to protect and the mother who had taught him what the crown demanded. Queen Elizabeth had shaped the monarchy through discipline, patience, and sacrifice, and her final authority mattered because the public still trusted her judgment more than any living voice in the palace. To defend Camilla too quickly would look selfish. To obey the letter fully would cut into his own heart. William watched his father struggle, and sympathy hit him harder than he expected. The prince knew what grief looked like when it had nowhere to go. He could see Charles not only as monarch, but as a son being corrected by a mother who was no longer there to explain herself. Still, William refused to let pain erase purpose. The future king understood that Queen Elizabeth had preserved the letter because she feared exactly this moment. Love trying to bend duty until duty broke. A senior courtier entered only after Charles asked for confirmation. In a documented palace account prepared for the review, the official confirmed that the letter gave authority to a small review council made up of the sovereign, the heir, and Catherine as the designated protector of the late queen's private wishes. A review council is a small group given power to examine a serious royal matter and recommend action. That meant the decision no longer belonged to emotion alone. Charles finally touched the letter. His fingers rested on the edge, and for a moment nobody spoke. Then the king whispered that his mother had always known where the weak point would be. Catherine froze. William lowered his eyes. Once Charles acknowledged the letter, the palace could no longer pretend it was only a private wound. The first sign of collapse was not a public announcement. It was a missing phrase. A palace draft was returned with Camilla's title removed from one ceremonial line, and suddenly, the invisible machinery of monarchy began to move. Doors closed. Phones stopped ringing. Staff lowered their voices. A title built over decades had begun to disappear one sentence at a time. Camilla received the revised wording from an aide and went completely still. The queen consort read the page once, then again, as if the missing words might return if she refused to believe what her eyes had found. A palace communications draft is an internal version of a statement prepared before the public ever sees it. And that mattered, because it showed the decision had moved beyond private shock. The letter was no longer only something Catherine had discovered. It was now shaping official language. Camilla folded the paper sharply, too sharply, and the edge pressed into her palm. The pain barely registered. Her title had not been announced as removed, not yet, but the palace had already begun practicing her absence from its own sentences. That mattered, because monarchy lives through wording. One phrase can raise a person. One missing phrase can lower them. The queen consort understood the danger immediately. If staff were already changing documents, then power had begun to move without waiting for her approval. Catherine felt no victory when the news reached her. She stood with William in a private corridor, holding herself together with the same restraint that had carried her through every painful turn of this crisis. The prince saw the sadness in her before she spoke. Catherine told him that watching Camilla lose standing did not feel like justice. It felt like carrying someone else's grief. William listened, then answered with quiet resolve. "The crown survives," he reminded her, "because painful decisions are sometimes made by people who take no pleasure in making them." Staff began removing Camilla from an upcoming ceremonial seating plan, and the quiet changes spoke louder than any announcement. A ceremonial seating plan is the official order showing where royal figures sit during formal events, and it matters because placement signals rank, trust, and favor. The queen consort was not erased in one dramatic stroke. She was shifted, lowered, softened out of the center. That was how palace power often worked, not with thunder, but with edits. Charles did not block the process. That silence became the revelation everyone inside the household understood, but no one dared say too loudly. The king had the authority to pause the review, challenge the wording, or demand delay. He did none of it. His refusal to interfere became the first true confirmation that Queen Elizabeth's letter carried real force inside the palace. Catherine knew what that meant. William knew too. Camilla was no longer protected by love alone. Camilla looked toward the closed door behind which Charles was meeting advisors. For years, she had trusted that the king would stand between her and the sharpest edge of judgment. Now that door stayed shut. The queen consort realized, with a coldness that reached deeper than anger, that he might not be able to save her this time. Yet the moment that changed everything did not happen in a council room. It happened in a private conversation, where pride finally gave way to pain. After the anger came something more dangerous: silence. Catherine and Camilla met again without documents, without aids, and without the sharp armor of formal words. For the first time, the confrontation was no longer about titles or protocol. It was about two women trapped by history, one carrying the judgment of a dead queen, the other facing the cost of a lifetime spent fighting for acceptance. Catherine asked for the meeting herself. She chose a smaller room away from the main offices because this conversation could not survive the cold pressure of procedure. The queen consort arrived without the same hard defense she had carried before. Her face looked drained, her voice lower, her pride still present but wounded. A formal procedure is the official process used by the palace to handle serious decisions, and Catherine wanted this moment to step outside that machinery. This was not about signatures. This was about truth. Camilla spoke first, and the admission changed the air between them. She said Diana's memory had always made her feel like a guest in a house that would never fully accept her. The queen consort did not say it as an excuse. She said it like something she had carried for decades and could no longer hide. Diana's memory mattered because it lived not only inside William and Catherine, but inside the public heart of the monarchy. To fight that memory was to fight something larger than one family. Catherine felt compassion rise before she could stop it. She did not excuse what had happened. She did not soften Queen Elizabeth's warning. But she saw, for the first time, the loneliness behind Camilla's need to control how history remembered her. Catherine understood why that mattered. A person fighting for acceptance can mistake protection for power, and power, inside the monarchy, can wound people quietly. The Queen Consort had spent years trying to stand beside Charles, without being compared to a ghost, but the harder she pushed, the more visible that ghost became. Camilla lowered her eyes when Catherine spoke of the letter again. Humiliation came first, then sorrow. The Queen Consort realized the document had not simply punished her. It had exposed the fear behind so many choices. The fear that Diana's place would always be warmer, stronger, and more loved than hers. Queen Elizabeth had seen that fear and written against its consequences. The late monarch's final will meant her last protected instruction, a command meant to guide the family after her death. And now that will stood between both women. Catherine made the turning point clear. She would not demand public disgrace. She would not turn the letter into a spectacle. But she would not protect a title Queen Elizabeth had ordered reviewed. A ceremonial title is a royal style used during official events, and stepping back from it would reduce Camilla's public standing without tearing her completely from Charles's side. It was mercy, but it was not escape. Camilla nodded once. The secret compromise had been formed. She would step back from certain ceremonial uses of the title and accept a reduced public role tied to the late Queen's conditions. Catherine had not defeated her. The Queen Consort had been forced to bow before the one authority she could never outmaneuver, Elizabeth's final will. But inside palace walls, mercy is never private for long, and by morning the outside world had found its symbol. By sunrise, the palace silence had become a national storm. The country did not need every detail to understand what had happened. One image was enough: Camilla arriving at a chapel service without the familiar title printed beside her name in the official order. In that missing line, Britain saw the shadow of Queen Elizabeth return not as memory, but as judgment. Camilla saw the front page before the palace statement reached the public. A major London newspaper had placed her arrival beneath the brutal headline, "The Queen's Final Letter," with a smaller line reading, "Title removed from palace order." The Queen Consort lowered the paper slowly, and for once, anger did not come first. Pain did. A palace order is the printed guide used for formal royal events, showing names, roles, and positions. That mattered, because when a name changes there, the whole country understands that power has shifted. Catherine watched the coverage privately with William, and the weight of it settled over her like stone. The prince stood beside her without speaking at first, because he knew she had tried to prevent humiliation, not create it. A broadcaster called it the most dramatic post-Elizabeth correction the monarchy had faced, showing the chapel program where Camilla's formal styling was missing from the page. Formal styling means the official way a royal person is named in public documents. Catherine heard those words and felt no relief. She felt the cost. Camilla kept reading until the page blurred. The Queen Consort had spent years trying to turn survival into acceptance, and now the public had witnessed her reduced standing in a single missing line. That mattered because monarchy depends on symbols more than speeches. A crown, a title, a seat, a printed name, each one tells people who belongs at the center. For Camilla, the silence around her title was louder than any accusation. The palace did not issue an angry denial. That decision shook people more than outrage would have. Instead, a carefully worded statement confirmed that certain ceremonial designations are under internal review. Ceremonial designations are the official labels and roles used during royal events, and that phrase gave the public enough truth to understand the letter had real power. Charles did not appear to defend Camilla. The king's silence became part of the story, and everyone inside the palace knew what it meant. William looked at Catherine as the reaction grew, and the future king saw how deeply the moment hurt her. People began saying she had shown restraint, that she had honored Queen Elizabeth's instruction without turning Camilla into a public sacrifice. Catherine wanted to believe that. The prince wanted it too. But both understood that public opinion could be kind in the morning and cruel by nightfall. The monarchy had survived the first wave, but survival still came with bruises. Crowds gathered quietly near Buckingham Palace, not in celebration, but in stunned reflection. One handwritten sign said, "Elizabeth's word still stands." That single line captured what the nation felt. The late queen had returned through paper, memory, and duty. Camilla saw the image later and set the newspaper aside without a word. Catherine turned away from the screen. William stayed beside her. And with the world now watching, the palace had only one task left: to decide what this judgment would mean forever. In the end, the letter did not destroy the monarchy. It forced the monarchy to remember itself. Catherine had discovered more than a hidden instruction. She had uncovered Queen Elizabeth's final boundary between private affection and public duty. Camilla did not lose everything, but she lost the illusion that a title could outrun history. Charles did not choose easily, but he finally chose the crown. Charles signed the final approval after a pause so long that everyone in the room felt the weight of it. Catherine stood beside William, and the prince stayed close, knowing she felt sorrow instead of victory. The king lowered the pen when it was done, and the sound seemed to close an entire chapter of royal pain. A final approval is the monarch's signed permission for an official decision to move forward. And this one mattered, because it turned Queen Elizabeth's hidden instruction into palace action. Charles had not simply signed a paper. He had accepted that his mother's authority still shaped his reign. Camilla received the decision in private, and did not fight it. The queen consort read the words once, then rested the page in her lap, as if even holding it required strength. Her title would be formally restricted in ceremonial usage. Her public role would be reduced, and the palace would confirm that the adjustment honored Queen Elizabeth's sealed instruction. Ceremonial usage means the way a royal title is used during official events, printed programs, seating plans, and formal announcements. That mattered because Camilla would still remain beside Charles, but she would no longer stand in the same public light. Catherine felt the cost of the decision settle deep inside her. She understood that protecting the crown often means absorbing blame for choices others were too afraid to face. William saw that burden clearly, and the future king did not let her carry it alone. He knew Queen Elizabeth's letter had protected more than one memory. It protected Diana's place in royal history, Catherine's future role, his own inheritance, and the moral spine of the monarchy. The document was not revenge. It was protection written before the storm arrived. Charles grieved without asking for sympathy. The king had chosen the crown, but that choice had wounded the woman he loved, and forced him to obey the mother he could no longer question. Camilla's silence became her final acknowledgement that the letter had named a truth she could not defeat. The queen consort had not lost everything, but she had lost the illusion that acceptance could be demanded, managed, or printed into existence. Honor had to be earned in ways no title could guarantee. The monarchy emerged wounded but steadier. That was the final verdict. Rank could not survive without restraint. Love could not overrule duty forever. And even behind palace doors, where pain is often hidden beneath careful words, Queen Elizabeth's final will had proved stronger than comfort, fear, or pride. Catherine returned the letter to its protective case, not as a weapon, but as a warning preserved for history. The crown may forgive many things, but it never forgets what it was sworn to protect. There is no next battle in this moment, only the final truth Queen Elizabeth left behind. Titles can be granted by the crown, but honor must be earned before it. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.